All right, what's up, people? Welcome back to the Black Muse Podcast. This is your host, Jason Muse, aka the Black Muse, and boy, have I got an episode for you. So this is going to be another one of my solo dolo current events episodes, but I want to get into this first segment here. So this first segment is about some news that's been making the rumblings around social media, and it's all about Meghan Markle. Apparently, Meghan Markle came out recently with a one of her latest podcast episodes. She has a podcast on Spotify called Archetypes. And actually, in preparation for this segment, I actually listened to the episode I'm going to talk about. And I remember when I first heard that she was doing a podcast and that she got paid a ridiculous amount of money on par with like Joe Rogan to do so. And I kind of rolled my eyes because I had a certain kind of media constructed um, conception of Meghan Markle, and I was just kind of dismissive of her. She's not very interesting, that kind of thing. That was kind of my attitude. And like most people who dismiss people perhaps too quickly, I hadn't put much thought into it. It wasn't something that I thought of myself as needing to justify. It's just somebody I just don't care for that much. I'm not going to give her my attention. That was the end of that. But in preparation for this segment, I realized that I got a lot of things wrong about her, and that a lot of people in the media who talk about her in perhaps the most negative way, they seem to have gotten her wrong too. At least that's my opinion as of now. Now, I've never met Meghan Markle personally. I don't know her, and I don't expect that I will ever meet her. But I think the point about coming to the realization that I have somebody misunderstood, and the extent to which my misunderstanding or my misapprehension of them has been influenced by social media and the media in the usual ways. Ironically, in and of itself, it became thematically related to what I actually mean to talk about. And it's actually the subject proper of what Meghan Markle was actually talking about when she said the things that people mostly in the right-leaning mainstream media are complaining about. And so I wanted to, let's say, take this opportunity to defend Meghan Markle a little bit. But before I do that, I need to properly contextualize why it is that a whole bunch of people are not giving Meghan Markle the benefit of the doubt, particularly those right of center. First and foremost, Meghan Markle seems to be a fairly progressive thinking person. She seems to sincerely believe in a lot of progressive values, values of inclusivity. She seems to affirm the belief that there are still problems involving systemic racism in our society, which is something that a lot of people right of center take exception to. Actually, recently did a deep dive episode with somebody on the subject matter proper of that. And my latest podcast episode was, is there or is there not such a thing as anti-Black systemic racism now in 2022? To me, the fact that that even needs to be questioned is kind of weird. But the person that I had as a guest on my podcast took the position that if there is such a thing, that it is on life support, and that it is not the kind of thing that we should focus our attention on. And that's a very bold claim, from my opinion. Nonetheless, Meghan Markle seems to, I think, side with somebody like me, and stereotypically this is a progressive thing, that there are forms of systemic oppression that still obtain today, and that have intimate, undeniable historical links to forms of oppression that were more explicit and diabolical in years past. And people like Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens and even Megyn Kelly take exception to those kinds of things. But the other thing, and the thing I'm going to start to focus on right now, is that not too long ago, not a few months ago, actually I would say about a year ago maybe at this point, Meghan Markle appeared in an interview by Oprah Winfrey, and she revealed something that was kind of marketed in the usual ways that the news markets salacious stories as a bombshell revelation that the royal family is racist. And this was met with immediate skepticism by those right of center who seem to have a very deep emotional investment in debunking the myth that everything is racist, or at least that's kind of the hyperbole they tend to use. So I kind of want to start with that context. I think that context is important to talk about the deeper point that I want to talk about, so that we can get a sense of why it is that there's so much animus against Meghan Markle in the first place. It doesn't seem that somebody as unassuming And if I'm being honest, as attractive and charming as Meghan Markle should draw the ire of so many people, particularly those right of center. But I want to try to establish why that is. Not really justify it, but just establish why there are people who exist who don't think too kindly of Meghan Markle. And I'm going to give some examples of that as well. So I begin with a summary of the bombshell article, the bombshell interview with Oprah Winfrey, what was said by both Meghan Markle and her now husband, the prince, to Oprah, and then go a little bit in depth about what was so upsetting to those typically left of center about what she revealed. Go ahead and take a look.
Meghan Markle sat down with Oprah Winfrey for a 2-hour interview that aired on March 7, 2021. About a third of the way through the interview, Meghan opened up to Winfrey about the decision that was made to not give her son Archie a royal title when he was born. Meghan explained that without the title, Archie would not be offered security, which was obviously a concern for her. Meghan revealed that she was never told the reasons behind the decision to not make her son a prince, but she has some ideas of her own, based on the conversations that she claims were had while she was still pregnant. It was in discussing these conversations that Winfrey became visibly uncomfortable and angry. Winfrey asked Meghan why she thought the monarchy didn't want to make Archie a prince. Winfrey asked,
"Do you think it's because of his race?" And I know that's a loaded question, but
I can give you an honest answer.
The very next sentence out of her mouth shocked Winfrey. Meghan Markle told Oprah Winfrey, "In those months when I was pregnant, all around this same time, so we had in tandem the conversation of he won't be given security, he's not going to be given a title, and also concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born." Just then, the camera panned to show Winfrey's face, as she sat speechless for a few seconds before saying, "What?" Meghan went to speak again, but Winfrey interrupted, clearly unhappy with the information that she just found out. Winfrey asked,
who is having that conversation with you? What?
Meghan sat nodding as Winfrey asked again, "What?" Winfrey had to take a minute to repeat what she had just been told. She then prodded carefully.
"And you're not going to tell me who had the conversation?"
I think that would be very damaging to them.
Meghan went on to explain that those were conversations that family had with Prince Harry that he relayed to her. At that point, Winfrey responded, "Whoa." She then asked Meghan if there was a concern that if the baby was too brown, that would be a problem. Meghan shared that she wasn't able to follow up on these conversations, but told Winfrey that if that's the assumption she was making, that feels like a pretty safe one. When Prince Harry joined the sit-down interview, Oprah Winfrey brought up the conversation again, asking for his version of the story. Harry disclosed, "That conversation, I am never going to share, but at the time it was awkward. I was a bit shocked." When the host inquired about what questions he was specifically asked, Harry replied, "I am not comfortable with sharing that, but that was right at the beginning. What would the kids look like? That was at the beginning when she wasn't going to get security, when my family suggested that she might continue acting because there wasn't going to be money for her." Harry later opened up about the lack of support he received from the royal family when lawmakers pointed out the racist undertones of the media coverage surrounding the couple. Harry revealed, "For us, for this union and the specifics around her race, there was an opportunity, many opportunities, for my family to show some public support. One of the most telling parts and the saddest parts, I guess, was over 70 female members of parliament, both conservative and Labour, came out and called out the colonial undertones of articles and headlines written about Meghan. Yet no one from my family ever said anything. That hurts." Famous friends and activists alike expressed their support and empathy for Meghan Markle on Twitter. Meghan's close friend and tennis pro Serena Williams shared her thoughts, tweeting, "Meghan Markle, my selfless friend, lives her life and leads by example with empathy and compassion. She also spoke of the racism and sexism she's experienced at the hands of the press." Williams wrote, "I know firsthand the sexism and racism institutions and the media use to vilify women and people of color, to minimize us, to break us down and demonize us." Bernice King, minister and daughter of Martin Luther King Jr., tweeted, "Royalty is not a shield from the devastation and despair of racism." Actor Leslie Jordan shared a video on Instagram captioning it, "We got your back, honey. We've got more queens than they do." Gabrielle Union was just as shocked as the rest of us during the interview, tweeting, "The tabloids are hosted by the palace? Whew." It's clear that Harry and Meghan have the support of their friends in this unfortunate situation. Check out one of our newest videos.
All right, so I think that breakdown, that kind of play-by-play and summary of what happened gives us a pretty good set of facts to work with in terms of understanding what people are objecting to. So let's first start by what people who would typically lean left of center perceived. What they perceived when Meghan Markle and her husband Prince Harry kind of dropped this bombshell in this interview with Oprah was this is evidence that racism is still alive and well, and even people who are of royalty are privileged in various different ways that your average person isn't, are still subject to it. The fact that Meghan Markle is a princess does not save her from experiencing racism in various different ways. And this is something that I think that a lot of people left of center genuinely believe. That racism can negatively impact even people like Oprah Winfrey, who's, as far as monetarily and economically, and even as far as her celebrity status, has done very well for herself, despite all of the things that are set up in our society to negatively impact her. These people like LeBron James have spoken in this matter. LeBron James is probably one of the most successful professional athletes that we have in our modern times. Yet there was some incident where somebody had spray painted maybe the N-word on their house or something like that. I don't know if that was ever debunked or whatever, but there was some incident that I vaguely remember LeBron James kind of speaking out and basically making the point that, hey, even though, I may be making, a whole lot of money and balling and a lot of people like me in terms of me being a very well-known professional athlete, I even still experience racism. So this seems to be a common thing that a lot of people sincerely hold, and there seems to be some truth to it. But it is controversial nonetheless, because there are a contingent of people who reject this idea. And one of the things that I think that they object to is the idea that people who are so successful and so affluent nonetheless are, in their minds, playing the victim card or playing the race card. And so here's where we can start to understand why what many perceived as a kind of scandalous revelation that the royal family is guilty of some kind of non-trivial act of racial animus towards Meghan Markle, and that is somehow deeply reflective of the problems of racism writ large in the world, which have an intimate and undeniable connection with forms of racism that have manifested themselves historically. There's a contingent of people who view affluent people who try to make that case as, in some sense, illegitimate. That their affluence is itself proof that society can't be as negatively impactful against your people as you say. Because lo and behold, Oprah Winfrey, Black woman, you are a billionaire. And lo and behold, Meghan Markle, half Black woman, half white woman, according to Wikipedia, you are literally a princess. You are literally royalty now. And lo and behold, LeBron James, you're one of the most successful Black basketball players to ever play in NBA history. And you are on the verge of becoming a billionaire, if not being a billionaire already, which is actually saying something, because not every NBA player becomes a billionaire. It's actually fairly rare. So for celebrities and literal royalty and very affluent people, very well-known, very well-connected people, to present themselves as victims of oppression is kind of laughable from this point of view, because their life accolades, or the accolades that they've gained in life, are being touted as evidence to the contrary. It can't be that bad for you. You can't be that much of a victim if you're that rich, and if you're that affluent, and if you're that well respected and loved by so many people who are fans of yours. So that kind of is the basic, let's say, overview of what's going on and kind of the crux of the contention here. And so you're going to have people like Ben Shapiro, like Candace Owens, like Amala Ekpanombi, I think is how you say her name, from PragerU. She has a podcast called Unapologetic. Black Conservative Perspective. even Meghan Kelly, if I didn't say her already, figures like that are going to launch very dismissive criticisms of Meghan Markle's with respect to specifically the whole thing with Oprah Winfrey. And I think that the main point that they are trying to articulate is that people like Meghan Markle are a dime a dozen, in that they're always trying to play the victim card when they shouldn't. And we have so many examples in our society where victimhood has its own kind of cachet. People virtue signal in kind of self-aggrandizing ways, and they go, "Look at me, poor me, I'm a victim," despite being affluent and successful in various different objectively verifiable ways. And they kind of roll their eyes at that. And this is a kind of a general criticism that people on the right have of people on the left. And I kind of hear where they're coming from, because I can think of a whole bunch of instances of people who are pretending to be victims in all kinds of ways, or who are overstating the sense in which they may have been negatively impacted or have a legitimate grievance against somebody or some group of people, or of society at large, when they really don't. Now, my more kind of nuanced view is, I do think that there are people who have legitimate grievances, who give voice to them in very public ways. And we ought not dismiss them too quickly, because we need to give ourselves time to evaluate the validity of their grievance claims. There are people who do suffer. There are people who are the legitimate victims of various different forms of oppression in 2022, in my opinion. And so what I think that people right of center are a lot of times incautious of, and run dangerously close to committing this, if not committing it regularly, is they're too dismissive, too quick of too many people. There are some people who I think that don't really have a really legitimate basis to complain about things. There are race hoaxes and things like that, where people just kind of lie, or sometimes just mistaken. I think the Bubba Wallace would be an example of people just mistaken. The mistakenly identified noose was just a rope that was tied in a way to conveniently be able to pull a garage down. It didn't have any kind of intended negative racial or racist meaning that it was trying to be conveyed to Bubba Wallace. That's the black NASCAR driver. But then you have people like Jussie Smollett, who I think just full-blown lie and try to make themselves out to be victims when they're not, and they orchestrate elaborate plots equipped with scripts and everything to try to make themselves out to be a victim in order to pursue whatever political, social, or perhaps even economic objectives through the victimhood status. So I do think that there is a valid criticism against that kind of thing. However, when you're overly dismissive, because in general your default is that any instance where people make legitimate grievance claims against forms of oppression is inherently invalid because there is no such thing as oppression, I think that that's a problem, because there are forms of oppression that negatively impact people in all kinds of subtle ways, and we would do well to be vigilant about identifying the subtle ways with which people are negatively impacted. A lot of times it's in passive ways. It's in ways that don't necessarily entail that anybody hates anybody else. They're systemic, they're structural, they're built into the very fabric of our society, and they have a certain kind of automaticity and passivity to them. They just happen, and it's kind of like not clear who to blame. And I think that we need to do well to be able to elucidate those kinds of things in our discourse. And it's actually very difficult to elucidate because of the very passive and ubiquitous nature of systems in our society. People don't usually pay attention to things that are systemic. People just kind of take things for granted and don't think about them very much, to be honest. I'm talking about things like the fact that we have banks, which are institutions that are dedicated to any number of things. But one of the basic things that most people use them for is to hold money in their bank accounts. Now, there's actually a vast network of rules and regulations and protocols and procedures and actual physical buildings and locations and vaults and very immaculate record keeping and accounting of so many different bank accounts all over the country, indeed all over the globe, that enable a banking system to operate with the kind of flawlessness, I wouldn't say flawlessness, but with the kind of convenience that it entails. And a lot of people don't think about that very much. A lot of people don't even know about all of those details, including myself. I know about some of them at a kind of over, big picture level, but I don't know about all the intricacies of how banks work. And you'd actually have to go to school for several years to understand all of the different kinds of economic instruments and how rich people make money and all of the clever accounting tricks that they use, some of them with questionable legality. But there's a lot of things that enable that institution, the banking institution writ large, to work the way that it does, that we don't even question. And we don't need to, because all we know is that it works. All we know is that our paychecks go to our bank, so we cash our checks, and my money's there when I need it, and I can use my debit card to pay for things. That's all I need to know. I don't need to know about the rest of the vastness of that system. The same thing is true about our supply chain and how the things that we conveniently find at the various different stores that we shop at get there. There's an intricate system of supplying all of the basic materials that are necessary to like construct or create or manufacture the products that we want to buy. And then there's an elaborate system of travel that those items take to get to the stores where we go to conveniently pick them up. And it wasn't until recently, when the supply chain got disrupted because of what happened during the COVID pandemic and how a lot of those things got shut down and interrupted, that I started to realize there's this elaborate system undergirding the milk that I buy at the store, or the packet of drumsticks, or the bacon that I buy, or the eggs that I procure, etc. I mean, even something as convenient as Uber Eats is reliant on a lot of the same aspects of our economy and the supply chain, etc. And so it isn't until you can't go to the store and conveniently get the things that you want to get, where it even creates an impetus for you to even delve into the intricacies of why my eggs ain't at the store, right? And a lot of systems and policies and the way that our society works are built on elaborate systems that none of us see. None of us even know very much about. We don't have to think about them because they're just there. They just work. They just exist. They just function, and we reap the benefits of those functions. It isn't until those functions are disrupted in such a way, in certain ways, that we even start focusing in on them. And so, insofar as there are facets of our society that work in this kind of automatic clockwork way that have negative impacts by race and that disproportionately affect certain racial groups or just certain identity groups in general over others, that's the kind of thing that people have in mind when they talk about systemic or structural racism. And a lot of times it's really difficult to describe and elucidate for people because, again, to reiterate my point, a lot of people are not focused on the intricacies of how these things work and how vast they are and the massive scale at which these things happen. It actually blow your mind if you start thinking about it and studying it a little more closely. So with that, what I want to do is I want to delve into some examples of some of the criticisms that Meghan Markle has been receiving from different figures.
You have extraordinary reporting in your book on what this was likely based on and how it doesn't match up to what Meghan said. Here's the clip, SOT 6, from the Oprah interview.
In those months when I was pregnant, all around this same time, so we have in tandem the conversation of he won't be given security, he's not going to be given a title, and also concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born.
What?
And
Who is having that conversation with you? What?
so,
There is a conversation. Hold up.
there's
Stop
several
right now.
there are several conversations.
There's a
about
conversation with you
it. With Harry.
about how dark your baby is going to be?
Potentially, and what that would mean or look like.
Ooh. And you're not going to tell me who had the conversation?
I think that would be very damaging to them.
So tell us what your reporting shows happened.
Well, of course, that was brilliant of you to bring that clip up, because the body language just showed her discomfort as she dug deeper into her own hole. I mean, the truth is this, that there are two truths. The first truth is that the conversation, I'm told and I believe, was very early on in their relationship when Harry is bowled over by Meghan, is desperately in love, and already is talking about marriage, but long before their engagement is even announced, let alone they're married and she's pregnant. And he's sitting in Clarence's house with then Prince Charles and Camilla. And Camilla just laughingly says, well, any child you'll have will probably have brown skin and ginger hair. And they all laugh, including Harry. I mean, not because of racism. It's just one of those things everybody imagines. When somebody is pregnant close to you, you wonder what the child will look like. But it was not said as anything other than a
concern. That's what Meghan claimed, that it was a concern about how dark the baby would be.
No, he wasn't concerned about that. And no one cared about the colour of the skin. It was just a joke. It was just a passing comment, which Harry probably told Meghan much later. But Meghan, you see, gets her story wrong deliberately, because she suggests it's when she's already pregnant with Archie, and Oprah fails to pick her up when Harry then turns up on the set and contradicts Meghan's whole timeline. And that's very, very important. And secondly, I don't believe, and no one has believed, that there was any conversations about the colour of Archie's skin or taking away privileges because of his colour, potential colour. In any case, he's completely white. But I mean, it just didn't occur. But she used Harry's reporting of this one comment in the kitchen, which was totally harmless in my view, but conjured it up, built it up into something horrendous. And that was part of her rehearsed speech to Oprah. I mean, nothing that came out of Meghan's mouth in that interview had not been rehearsed, all very carefully planned. And that was one of the headlines that she wanted. She sought to damage Camilla and to his disgrace and disloyalty, while telling the truth, Harry, about the timeline, did not say that it wasn't intended as racism. But there we are. That's how it occurred.
Right. Can we talk about the programme? It doesn't really matter what I think of Meghan Markle. It doesn't matter whether I believe her or not. What matters is the damage that she is accused of doing to the royal family. And let me ask you honestly, on the issue of race, she has now got the whole of America and the worst of the world, frankly, looking upon the palace, the monarchy, the Queen, everyone in the royal family as a bunch of racists. And it all comes down to two things that she said in the interview. One is something she didn't hear, but Harry reported back to her, that a senior member of the royal family that wasn't the Queen or Prince Philip, so presumably is either Charles or William, we would hazard a guess, has made a comment to Harry about what colour skin his baby may be if the relationship progresses.
Okay, but there was concern about the way in which that question was asked.
That's my question for you. She said there was concern. Harry didn't say that. Is there a qualitative difference between somebody perhaps innocently saying to you, out of interest, if you have one parent is white, one parent is black, what colour could your baby be? Let me finish. What colour could your baby be? Is there a difference between that question phrased in that innocent, perhaps, way, and somebody doing it in a tone that says, well, how dark is your baby going to be? Well, I think, in a derogatory, perhaps racist tone.
Exactly, and there is a difference. But what we're getting from the interview is that it was said in a negative way.
She said that, but he didn't, did he?
Listen, stop separating Harry and Meghan. They are a team, quite clearly, a very strong team. And I do believe that she backs him up and he backs her up.
Right.
So, and like I said, tone and language is everything.
But is there a difference?
When
let me ask
when it was said to me,
the
key word was, are you worried?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
But that to me is
and
racist.
there's a big difference.
That to me is racist.
But that's what she reports.
racist.
Do you think it's racist? It's a legitimate question many people have asked. Is it racist, do you think, if for argument's sake it was William or Charles? Let's not put a name to this person. We don't know. And part of the problem, and I know you agree with me about this, it'd be easier if they just said who it was.
Right.
Right? I'll come to that. But is there a difference? If it was said perhaps in all innocence, right? And they just said, oh, what colour baby might you have? Without any suggestion of it being a concern or a worry if it had darker skin. Would that in itself, would just the question be racist?
That in itself is fine, but you have to think about how it feels on the receiving end, because what we're speculating is as to how that message...
Yeah, I don't know how it was communicated.
Right,
but what I would say to you is, if it was done as a worry or concern...
We also have to take into consideration how it felt. The other thing that we also have to think about, and I've publicly said this on Twitter, Piers, I agree with you now that I feel that they should have named the person, because all it's led to is all of us asking loads of questions, and I personally am looking at the royal family as to which one could
Who's
it be?
the racist, yeah.
Who's the racist? But
Meghan Markle said that there was a decision taken by the palace to stop Archie being a prince based on his potential skin colour. That is completely untrue. That's just not true. Now, the damaging effect of that, plus whatever may have been said to Harry, and we don't know what it was or the context, and we don't know who said it, but it was those two things have detonated as you know, a racially charged bomb at the palace, which is almost impossible for them to refute because they don't talk in public about this kind of thing. And people aren't probably going to believe them even if they do now. But that's what concerns me, is that the first part of that allegation, we don't know any of the details or who said it or how they said it. And the second one is completely untrue. Meghan just got it wrong. Archie hasn't been prevented from being a prince because of his skin colour. And that's been now believed by Americans on national television there. And that is damaging.
But again, do you know what? It's their lived experience and...
No, it's not true.
Well, look, Piers, it's their lived experience. And again, this is where the confusion comes in. You know, how do you sometimes identify covert racism? It's actually quite hard because it's not there for
But
you
Alex,
in
on
black
that one,
and
it's
white.
not true.
I know,
There's no covert racism.
But
There's no
Piers, what you're saying is there are facts.
Right.
And what Alex is saying is there is an experience and a perception of those facts that you only appreciate when you're in that situation.
No, I'm sorry. On that second part, on the first part, I agree. If it turns out, let me make it crystal clear where I stand on this. If it turns out that a senior member of the royal family, a future king perhaps of this country, we don't know who it is. I don't want to cast... The aspersions are being cast because they won't say. But they have eliminated the Queen and Prince Philip. So they've gone halfway, which I think is incredibly unfair on the ones who are left. But say it is a future king that said this in a derogatory way. We can't have a racist king.
We can't.
So that, to me, would be racism. If it was said derogatory... But the second part of the charge, that Archie has been banned from being a prince because of his skin colour, is just untrue. It's nothing to do with racism. The fact itself on which he's based that claim is not true.
Except her perception appears to be that it might have been...
Well, it's like me saying the sky's blue outside. My perception is it's raining. You can't muck around with facts. She got the facts wrong on that. It's been demonstrated today in every paper that fact is simply untrue. There's been no discrimination against Archie in terms of being called a prince because of his skin colour, because he's not entitled at the moment to be called a prince.
What concerns me more is the comment about the colour of the baby's skin.
Right.
OK? We all feel passionate about different things.
Yeah.
OK? We've not even, spoken about the mental health and all of that.
Well, we're coming to that.
Well, we'll come to that. But, it's really important that we have these conversations, because what I've noticed on Twitter, particularly over the last few days, is that this interview and what's happening with the royal family, the ripple effect is huge.
Huge.
To the point where me and you are on here, we feel so passionately about it, and it's great.
I genuinely feel...
And I want to talk about it, and I do feel as though, of course, if we find out who it is, I'm sure, you will be right behind me, and I'll be right behind you, talking about how wrong it is and how,
No question.
No question whatsoever. But what I find is that people don't always want to accept that it's a possibility that something like this has happened. And this is the thing with racism, right? Racism isn't always caught on camera. Racism isn't always a black man led on the floor with a white police officer's knee in his neck. Mm-hmm. It comes in all different shapes or forms. What I want to see is the same energy that we had back in the summer right now.
Yes, but let me just put a little dampener on this, right? One of the two charges of racism, perhaps the most incendiary, that actually he was being discriminated against, because the Queen decides all the titles. So what she was basically saying is the Queen's a racist who stopped Archie being a prince because of his skin colour. We know that is completely untrue. So
look, I don't know that the Queen's a racist. I would like to think that the Queen is not a racist.
Right.
I don't think she is a racist.
My point is this.
Okay, but he's obviously got a difficult relationship.
No, but Alex,
this is no ordinary family, Piers, because, you know, as we heard from the
But Alex, do you
yesterday,
accept on that point Meghan just got it wrong?
Like I said, I am not an expert on royal protocols.
Right.
I am not an expert.
But the experts who are have all said unanimously.
They've all said, but again, they've said something different. Piers,
I haven't said something different.
I'm happy to listen to both sides. Well, they feel a certain way. They feel that Archie hasn't been given a title because of the colour of his skin.
Prince William.
We know that's not true.
Well, hang on a moment. So Prince.
But you don't know that it's not true.
We
because,
do.
No, think about
it.
Can we just talk about this particular fact?
If we think about the possibility that what they're saying is true and that they were worried about how dark Archie would be, it's also a possibility that they might not want him to be a prince. They might not want him to have a title. And the thing is, shock horror, these things happen in life. Unfortunately, this is the way it goes sometimes.
Joining me now is Nigel Farage, former UK Brexit Party leader. Nigel, look, hurling unsubstantiated claims of racism on national TV at your royal in-laws and then getting your critics cancelled, is this not the ultimate privilege?
Oh, yes, it certainly is. And, you know, Meghan married into the royal family. I think it was clear from day one what her intentions were. You see, it was very interesting. At that wedding 3 years ago, which Fox News covered so well, Oprah Winfrey was a guest at the wedding, despite the fact Meghan Markle had only met her once before. So I think their intentions were clear. To accuse the royal family, to accuse the Queen, effectively, who next year will have reigned for 70 years, but not just over the UK. She's the head of the Commonwealth. Over 50 countries, 2.3 billion people, the vast majority of whom are Asian or black. Our royal family has done a huge amount for people of colour all over the world. That was unsubstantiated. Much else of what she said was simply untrue. Her grandson, they wouldn't give poor little Archie a princedom. But a great-grandchild of the monarch does not get one of those titles. It was a false claim. Prince Harry said, "My father cut me off financially," but only when they'd left the UK, given up their royal duties, and gone to the West Coast. So the whole thing was a fabrication. It was from Meghan Markle, an acting performance to emote, to plead with people that she had victim status, and also, of course, to say that she suffered badly from mental health problems and had thought perhaps about taking her own life. All I can say is that young woman the other night didn't appear to me to have any mental health problems, but it is shocking that if you attack somebody who claims they've got a mental health problem, you're suddenly the villain.
For the Montecito Journal, who has been covering the royal family for nearly 5 decades and happens now to live just down the road from Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Richard Meiners joins me now. Richard, good to see you today. So what's your take on all of this, sir?
Well, it's opened an enormous Pandora's box, but I have to say straight away, I don't think the royal family is racist. You've got to remember that for nearly half a century, the Queen has been the head of the Commonwealth, which is a number of lands around the world that were from the colonial days, and the majority of the people who live in those lands are black or Asian. So the Queen is far from being a racist, and I don't think the royal family as a whole is racist, as William said this morning in London. I mean, I think probably this came about because when you've got a baby coming, people will say, well, does it look like the dad? Does it look like the mum? Does it have the same sort of hair? Does it have the same features? And obviously coming from a mother who's biracial, and then, of course, Harry, people were saying, well, what skin tone might it have? I don't think that was said probably in a racist way, just a general question about the future of the child. Like one would say, well, do you think it's going to have the eyes of its dad, or is it going to have the hair of its mum? That kind of thing. And I think this is now being blown out of enormous proportion and causing a great deal of damage to the royal family, who are incandescent with rage over this. And what you've got is really a tale of two countries, where in the US, well, obviously with Harry and Meghan, there's a great deal of sympathy for them. And of course, the anger that's being shown in Britain, how the monarch is being blasted by Harry and Meghan and the rest of the royal family. And of course, Prince Philip is just recovering from heart surgery, and he's about to celebrate, we hope, his 100th birthday in June. And the Queen herself is going to be 95 next month and has never set a foot wrong during her reign.
Meghan Markle sits down with her poor husband and talks to Oprah about all the dirty laundry from the royal family.
There was no guidance as well, right? There were certain things that you couldn't do, but unlike what you see in the movies, there's no class on how to speak, how to cross your legs, how to be royal. There's none of that training. That might exist for other members of the family. That was not something that was offered to me.
So nobody tells you anything?
No.
Nobody prepares you?
No, but even down to like the national anthem. No one thought to say, oh, you're American. You're not going to know that. That's me late at night Googling, what's the national, I've got to learn this. I don't want to embarrass them. I need to learn these 30 hymns for church. All of this is televised. We were doing the training behind the scenes because I just wanted to make them proud.
I just wanted to make them proud. And that is why I'm sitting down with you, Oprah, to say that these are the worst people on earth, because I just care and I want to make them proud. It's just, it's crazy. All I wanted to do as a divorced American actress was become a princess in another country, and they expect me to learn the national anthem? What? Is that crazy? What do they think I have? Google? What do they think, that I can look it up? That's crazy. Well, actually, shut up, Harry. Stop it. It's just ridiculous. You see, am a victim, says the princess. This woman comes in. The reason I mentioned, by the way, that she's divorced is she is entering into the royal family of a country with a state church. So that's actually a big problem. And rather than say, oh my gosh, thank you for making this exception. I know this is bad. I know we shouldn't be doing this here in the royal family. Instead, she complains about having to learn hymns. What, they expect me to learn the hymns? Because I'm entering into the family that runs the state church? Come on, give me a break. Poor Harry. So because she doesn't like it, because it turns out that being a royal is not just about glitz and glamour and putting a tiara on, because she found out it actually involves duty and work. Very difficult sort of chores like learning the national anthem of your country, of your new country. Because of that, she made her husband leave his family and abdicate all of his duty, all of his responsibility to the country that had been so good to him and that he was born for. She's like, no, we got to go because I want to do voiceovers in Disney cartoons or something. So they leave. Now they're in LA. They get to keep a lot of money, and poor Harry is just struggling through. Now they're attacking his family on television, and the minute he tries to interject, she tells him to keep quiet.
Let's actually get to what Meghan Markle and Prince Harry actually said, because, what difficult lives they lead. It is one of the saddest stories I've ever heard. A prince, grew up a prince, was shielded from his own idiocy for literally years. Remember, Prince Harry was a guy who just back in 2005 dressed up in a full-on Nazi uniform at a Halloween party. Right? So like Ralph Northam would just never happened, right? It's pretty incredible how that guy is now Captain Woke. So that's exciting stuff. Repentance is possible, people. All you have to do is take your entire family and just toss them under the bus. And meanwhile, Meghan, what a victim. What a difficult life she has led. I can't speak enough about what a heroine she is. Just the amount of heroism that she displayed by going on Oprah and ripping on her in-laws' family for fame and fortune. Truly incredible stuff. It's tough. It's tough. So many tough things have happened to Meghan Markle. Like one time Kate Middleton taught her to curtsy. Or Prince Harry taught her to curtsy right before she met the Queen. It's just because she was an ignorant American, you see. And then she was ushered into the halls. But then she saw the flaws in the royal family in a way no one else could, because she'd experienced American-style racism. So she was shocked to see it in the halls of royalty. That's it. By the way, Netflix movie coming out in a year. Watch. Starring them, probably. Right? Well, maybe, I don't know. Maybe she'll recast herself, but I don't know. Maybe she likes seeing herself on film. Who the hell knows? In any case, here she was explaining, the Prince Harry taught her to curtsy. She was just a little down-home girl from America, and she came in and she had to learn the ways of the royals, but only she was able to identify their deepest secret flaw. Racism. Here we go with Oprah.
Harry and I are in the car, and he says, okay, well, my grandmother's there, so you're going to meet her. Oh, great. I loved my grandmother. I used to take care of my grandmother. This is great. He goes, right, do you know how to curtsy? I said, what? He said, do you know how to curtsy? Now, I thought genuinely that was what happens outside.
Yeah.
I thought that was part of the fanfare. Or I didn't think that's what happens inside. And I said, but it's your grandmother. He goes, it's the queen.
Wow.
And that was really the first moment that the penny dropped.
Oh my God. She never realized she was supposed to curtsy before the queen. So that's, what a difficult, I mean, how difficult must that have been? To have to curtsy before the Queen of England? And my God, how humiliating. You know, like every other human who curtsies before the Queen of England or bows before the Queen of England? Can't believe it. Just crazy. Crazy stuff. And that's when the penny dropped and she was about to learn of the predations of the royals. And well, by the way, it's not all on Meghan Markle. Harry's the actual villain of this piece. Okay, Harry grew up with these people, and now he's just dumping all over his entire family. Harry is a bag of garbage. Harry is terrible. Harry was Captain, I'm going to dress up however I want to dress up. I'm going to go to Las Vegas and get naked and smoke pot on the basis of my royal heritage. And then he's like, and you know what I'm going to do now? I'm going to take my entire family. I'm just going to drive up this bus over them, back up the bus over them, because my wife, who wants to be a famous actress and wasn't very good in Suits, now she wants it. So I'm going to go right along. The real villain here is not even Meghan. Right? Meghan is whatever Meghan is. Harry is the one who's the villain. It's his family, right? So whatever I think of Meghan, I think twice as badly of Harry. Okay, so then Meghan Markle starts talking about how difficult, she starts talking about how racist everyone was. And she relates a conversation in which apparently somebody asked how dark her son's skin would be. Now, this would be an excellent time for Oprah, being the interviewer, to ask, okay, can you name a name? I mean, that would be, if someone says something as overtly racist as, how dark is your son's skin going to be? First of all, what kind of stupid, I'm just going to say it, I don't believe that happened. I don't think that happened. Honest to God, I don't think it happened. The reason I don't think that happened is because no one says anything like that. That's a ridiculous question. How dark is your son's skin going to be? Like, beyond, like, the racism of it, the actual stupidity, like the human stupidity of having to ask that question. Do you not know what biracial children look like? Like, that's what? Okay, so I don't believe this for a second, but here she is saying a thing I don't, plus maybe it's true and she's such a bad actress that I can't even tell that it's true. That's possible too. Here is Meghan Markle.
In those months when I was pregnant, all around this same time, so we have in tandem the conversation of he won't be given security, he's not going to be given a title, and also concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born.
What?
Cut away to Oprah looking all shocked. Yeah. And of course she connects the fact that Harry, who is like ninth in line for the throne at this point, that Harry is not going to get the security and he's not going to get all this stuff. And again, I believe at this point they'd already decided they wanted to move to America. That was going to be the basis for, it was all about skin color. Of course, it was all about the racism. Okay, so she continues along these lines, and then she says that she wanted to commit suicide, and the royal family would not get her the mental help that she required. Okay, now, again, I don't know the truth or falsehood of any of these statements. I do know that once you claim that you were suicidal, that you had suicidal ideation, then people generally should not question that. So I will assume that this is true. I also will assume that I have no idea what anybody else did around her, because I don't think that she's a credible source about anything other than her own feelings. I think most people are credible sources on their own feelings, but people tend not to be credible sources when their self-interest is at stake. Here's Meghan Markle then trying to impute to the royal family a lack of care for her suicidal ideation, which is a hell of an accusation to make.
Look, I was really ashamed to say it at the time, and ashamed to have to admit it to Harry, especially, because I know how much loss he's suffered.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew that if I didn't say it, that I would do it. And I just didn't want to be alive anymore.
Okay, and then what she says is that she went to the institution and they were like, you can't get outside help because if you get outside help, then that is going to become a story in and of itself. Well, okay, first of all, Meghan Markle was a story from like the day that she joined the royal family because she started lecturing everybody inside the palace about race. I mean, she was in the tabloids every single day. So that's number one. Number two, if you think there aren't healthcare workers on staff at the palace, I have doubts. Okay, so I'm not going to question her suicidal ideation. I am going to question the story because, again, no names, no specifics. It is all these broad allegations that are being made. And in fact, post-interview, apparently Harry has now come out and says, you know who it wasn't? It wasn't Elizabeth and it wasn't Prince Philip. It wasn't any of the people who people actually care about from the royal family. But they won't name names. Okay, so this was pretty fun. At a certain point, Oprah actually asked Meghan if she left the royal family to brand build. And Meghan is like, no. Of course not. Here she was.
There are even stories that you knew all along that this was going to happen. You went through the whole process, and it was all intentional to build your brand.
Can you imagine how little sense that makes? I left my career, my life. I left everything because I love him, right? And our plan was to do this forever. Our plan for me, I mean, I wrote letters to his family when I got there saying, I am dedicated to this. I'm here for you. Use me as you'd like. There was no guidance as well, right? There were certain things that you couldn't do, but you know, unlike what you see in the movies, there's no class on how to speak, how to cross your legs, how to be royal. There's none of that training. That might exist for other members of the family. That was not something that was offered to.
Okay. The beginning part of that. That's hysterically funny. I'm sorry. That's just from any angle. That is super funny. So Oprah's like, so did you like join the royal family and then you knew that you were going to build your career that way? And she's like, can you imagine? I left my career as a second-rate actress in a third-tier part on Suits to be a princess? And somebody would suggest that I did that for career purposes? No, I did it because I love this dumbass over here. It's because I love the guy sitting next to me. This guy. Right here. Prince Harry, Captain Lovable. Love that guy. I mean, I left a job on Suits. On Suits. Yeah, I'm sure it was all pure love. Listen, maybe they love each other. That's fine. Sure. All right. Sure. I'm sure career had nothing to do with that. I'm sorry. I left my job on Suits, and you're suggesting that maybe becoming a princess was a career move? A little I'm suggesting because that is not a horizontal move right there. I'm sorry, when you think of like horizontal versus vertical career moves, actress on Suits to princess, is that a horizontal move? I'm going to go no on that one. No. Okay, but again, Markle is not the actual villain of this piece. Meghan Markle is whatever Meghan Markle is. Okay, Prince Harry is the villain of the piece. He knows all the members of his family. He's the one who has decided that he is going to go along with whatever his wife wants to do here. And he's going to say terrible, terrible things about his family. And he's going to prove that he is morally superior to his family. So, for example, Prince Harry, he says that he is free. His brother and his father, they are trapped. But he is so free now. He's free like a bird. And he is free to speak about the evils of his own family. First of all, people who dump on their own families typically ask jackasses, like not good people. Here's Prince Harry. But I'm free. They're trapped. I'm here with you, Oprah, with you. Here's Prince Harry, who, again, worse than Meghan Markle.
Please explain how you, Prince Harry, raised in a palace, in a life of privilege, literally a prince, how you were trapped.
Trapped within the system, like the rest of my family are. My father and my brother, they are trapped. They don't get to leave. And I have huge compassion for that.
Wow. I mean, they don't get to leave. They're trapped. But I am free here with you, Oprah. And you know, I got cut off from the royal fortune. I could only live on my mother's $25 million endowment. That's really what they said. $25 million. Okay, so there's an actual deeper underlying thing that's going on here, and that has to do with racism and colonialism. There's been this move in Britain to do sort of what you've seen in the United States, which is the entire history of Britain is about colonialism and racism and brutality, in the same way that the entire history of America is about racism and colonialism and brutality, right? This is all tied in. And Prince Harry backs that to the hilt. So he starts talking about how he's done the work, right? Other members of the royal family, they didn't do the work. He says racism drove him out of Britain. It was the tabloids and their racism that drove him out of Britain. And then he says, quote, I've spent many years doing the work and doing my own learning, but then my upbringing and the system in which I was brought up and in which I've been exposed to, I wasn't aware of it to start with, but by God, it doesn't take very long to suddenly become aware of it. It takes living in her shoes for a day or those first 8 days to see where it was going to go and how far they were going to take it and get away with it.
Okay, so this reaches the crux of what I think Ben is objecting to, which is that this is a similar kind of line or position or perhaps rhetoric that a lot of woke people take. And so they characterize extremely complicated and long histories as inherently white supremacist in nature. And not without good reason, because those histories do involve those things. But they make it seem like there's nothing more to them than that. That's the only way to look at them, the only way to interpret them. And to deny that is in some sense to act in such a way as to keep those white supremacist power structures, which remain mostly unchanged, even now, contemporary times, in place. And so Harry positioning himself as a kind of ally to evoke that language by using this rhetoric and saying, I'm against the system, and I in some sense became aware of the system, and I'm intimately connected with the person who has to suffer under the system, and Meghan Markle, I guess. That's the kind of thing he's objecting to, and this all ties back to what I said before, which is fundamentally what people right of center are objecting to is what they deem as a mischaracterization as America, or perhaps even Great Britain, as inherently racist, very bad, evil, colonizer, rapey place, and nothing more. There's no positives to recognize about places like the United States or places like the UK. There's no accomplishments in terms of civilization. There's no accomplishments in terms of the way the society is organized. There's no accomplishments in terms of the liberal ideals that we are striving to live up to in this country in particular, for freedom and liberty and whatnot. None of those things matter, because racism and colonization are the bedrock of the nation, and the nation is always and forever bad and evil because of those things that most people, even today, who even are patriotic, would recognize are bad and are long since past. But yeah, and so I understand where they're coming from, but it's manifested itself into a kind of dismissiveness of anybody who talks in that vein, and I think that it's applied to broadly, generally. And what I'm going to do in this second hour is I'm going to attempt to illustrate how I think it was applied too broadly to Meghan Markle more recently. But I wanted to start here by characterizing or kind of trying to summarize the kind of backlash that Meghan Markle got. So as I transition here, I want to make a couple things clear. So according to Wikipedia, Meghan Markle identifies as mixed race. It says here, she identifies as mixed race, often answering questions about her background as, with, quote, my dad is Caucasian and my mom is African American. I'm half black and half white. So if Wikipedia is accurate, she's half black and she's half white. Okay. So Meghan Markle's mixed race. She could take on the kind of black identity. Regardless, she could just assume the mixed race identity and go, but because I'm half black, I'm subject to, I'm at the intersection of black and white as a mixed race person or whatever. So, and women and all of these other things as well. So I am subject to all forms of oppression that pertain to those groups. So she can just kind of intersectionality her way into the oppression Olympics. But the real tenor of the message that I want to have is, just because Meghan Markle is in some sense successful or affluent or is fortunate or lucky, is attractive, it gets a lot of attention, is famous, does not mean that it's impossible for her to experience things for which she could have a legitimate grievance. So if she's being socially ostracized because she's black, right? Just because she's affluent or pretty or well-known doesn't take away from the fact that she's being discriminated against because she's black. And so she may have a legitimate grievance on that basis, right? And I think that the commentary that Ben Shapiro gave that was really, really dismissive is not properly attentive to that possibility. Even affluent, rich people who are being discriminated against based on immutable characteristics have a legitimate grievance, right? I don't think they should frame it as all of society is out to get them. That seems extreme, but they still have a legitimate basis to complain about the injustice or the indignity that they're experiencing, however mild or however negligible the impact beyond their hurt feelings, because that is morally reprehensible in general. So I don't think that we should be dismissive of even affluent people to the extent that they experience forms of oppression or racial hostility or anything like that.